Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the PCMA Southeast October Program. My name is Cassandra Well. I'm with Experience Kissimmee, and I also serve on the PCMA Southeast Chapter Board. And I want to thank our speaker for joining us. We're excited to welcome Michelle Crowley. She is with PCMA. She is the Chief Growth and Innovation Officer. We're very sad to hear that our president and CEO of PCMA, Sheriff Karamat, could not join us. He sadly had a death in the family, but we are thrilled and honored that Michelle could be here today. And I'm also want to introduce my colleague from the PCMA Southeast Board, Mary Klein with Wolfgang Puck Catering.
Thank you again for joining us today. Please enjoy your salads while we make a few announcements. Today's program is being live streamed thanks to Shepard Exposition Services. We hope you'll join the conversation today following PCMA on social media. If you're a planner and you haven't added your business card for chances to win the Visit Seattle or Margaritaville drawings, we'll come around to each table.
So we'll be walking around in a moment, and put your card in each basket, because there are two separate drawings, one from our sponsor with Visit Seattle, and then the other one from our sponsor with Margaritaville Resort Orlando. And thank you so much for everyone. It was great participation today for our CSR activity. Today we are donating our stuffed animals. We stuffed 60 cute little teddy bears, superheroes, and these will be donated to the Osceola Sheriff's Department for SAFE, which is stuffed animals for emergencies. So these little guys will go to help comfort and calm children who are dealing with tough situations. And I'd like to welcome and introduce from the Osceola Sheriff's Department, Captain Guevara, joining us on his day off.
Thank you for this invitation, very humbling. And on behalf of the Sheriff Russ Gibson, he sends his regards. I'm here accepting this teddy bears, although sometimes some people might think this is something very small, but it's extremely significant when you go to a crisis event where there are children involved that they have been a victim of a crime or have lost one of the family members. And you'd be surprised, even on traffic accidents, when somebody passes away, this is very comforting to when you're talking to a 4 or 5-year-old and 8-year-old. And you give them something at that point to temporarily take that pain away and temporarily take their attention to something else until we can resolve the problem. But a lot of the trauma that kids experience, a lot of times, a teddy bear can do a lot. So thank you for thinking of the children in our community. We only the medium, so we can give them to them. But your work and your thought that comes into this is very important for that community. We're just servants of the community, and you're servants, and you guys allow us to do this for the community. It's amazing. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And how about this beautiful new resort that's hosting us today? Right? Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome the General Manager of Margaritaville Resort Orlando, Scott Robbins, and thank him for their hospitality today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you all here. We're really excited for this event and later night's event as well. We've been talking about it for a long time because we expected you. So you're gonna see things going up. My presentation will have nothing to do with the timing or anything like that. So just feel free to watch. I did promise Susan that I would talk about please for the planners to put your card in the basket to win a stay here. And what was the thing? Oh, okay. So Margarita and Jason are over there because Susan's going to yell at me if I don't say all this stuff. So we are offering tours afterwards. Anyone who wants to see the resort, so you just grab a hold of Margarita, and she looks lovely in her blue outfit. So many people have commented on how slim she looks, and she's just got a big head now, but she's fantastic. And we did, yes, the question does arise that we did hire Margarita just solely for her name. So she can answer the phone, Margarita at Margaritaville, and it does work. So enough about that nonsense, but let me tell you a little bit about our resort. We're very proud. I came up here about a year and a half ago to start, and there was total construction. Margarita was the first one to join me, and we're selling in a construction zone. And there was no cottages, and there was no water park, and there was nothing. And she was amazing because people were buying, and it was like we fooled them. But now it's amazing. We still have a lot more to do, but majority of it is done. We have a phenomenal water park that's 14 acres, Island H2O Live. And it's all about the technology, and you get a wristband, and you every ride you go on, you click, and you get points, and then you can decide what color or what music is playing as you go down the slide. And for parents that are with kids, you can sit in an adult area and enjoy an alcoholic beverage, or you can sit in a cabana, and then you can look and download your app and know exactly where your kids are at any point in time, because they also have the bands, and you connect them with your app, and you can see them exactly where they are, and you don't have to move, and you don't have to go down those scary slides. You can be like us bigger people who go down the lazy river 400 times. So, and it's just a phenomenal park. And then we have Sunset Walk, where it's filled with restaurants. We have a movie theater, studio movie grill with 12 movie theaters. It's a dinner and a movie, and they have an outdoor cafe. Ford's Garage just is open. Meowman's English Style Pub, Bento Cafe. It's Sugar, phenomenal. My kid spends a ton of money in there. Bahama Bucks Shaved Ice. We have BurgerFi. We have Gene Simmons Rock and Brew. Coming up, we have Game Time. We have Estefan's Kitchen. Later next year, there'll be BB King's and Lafayette's Louisiana Kitchen. We have a Mexican restaurant, El Jefe, and Tequila Bar. We have Radio Margaritaville, Sirius XM Radio, live radio broadcasts throughout the week is there. You can just go right up to the window, and the DJ will wave you in and put you on the air, and it's amazing. We have a stage with live music, live entertainment. It's just phenomenal, and it's just right in, it's walking distance from the hotel. But we also have shuttles from the hotel that go around the whole entire complex and bring our guests around. Then we have this hotel, 184 rooms. If you talk to any one of my employees, we'll all have different sizes of the meeting room space. But if you talk to Jason, it's one size. Margarita, it's another. But roughly, I think I'm supposed to say it's 40,000 of flexible meeting space, indoor and outdoor. We're very flexible. I like Gumby sometimes, so it's phenomenal meeting room space. The rooms, are fantastic. We have Jimmy Buffett suite that takes up one whole floor. We have 4 restaurants, 3 swimming pools. We have a fitness center, a kids club. We're building a game room right now. We have a spa. Now, the spa is a baby of mine, so we built the spa, 7 treatment rooms, couples treatment room. There's in the treatment rooms, actually, you also have light therapy as well. We have a salon that has hair, pedicures, but we have a manicure bar in true Margaritaville style. So you sit at the bar, get your manicure done, and you have a drink or champagne. You sit it right at the bar. Then you go in to relax. We found our lost shaker of salt. We have a Himalayan salt room. and with heated salt chairs, sauna, steam room. In the shower rooms, we have vitamin C showers. I mean, it's an incredible spa. Plus, as soon as July 1st hit, we have CBD oil treatments and products in the spa as well. So, you know, I'm there all the time. It's the best. Then if you look out that way, we have cottages. Now, we call them cottages because of the style, but they're 1 to 8 bedroom vacation homes. You know, it's funny calling an 8-bedroom home a cottage, but that's what it is, and they all have bathrooms. So all the bedrooms have bathrooms connected with it, living room, dining room, full kitchens. You know, so it's awesome. So, you know, that 184 hotel rooms, but we're eventually going to have 900 1 to 8 bedroom cottages. So that's why the size of our ballroom and our porte-cochere is really for just under 6,000 rooms that we have here that we can do events for. And then we'll be having 300 timeshare, and we'll also be building an amphitheater for concerts. So that's coming up. Right now, we currently have about 300 vacation homes done. In the last phase of 187, they've already sold 50%, and I think we've been selling those for about 2 months now, 3 months. So they're selling fast, and we do have our cottage sales on site, so if anyone's looking for a vacation home. And you can purchase them, and you can put them into the pool for us to rent them, and everyone checks in at the lobby. So they get the full experience, and if you're staying at the vacation home, you get all the amenities that come with the resort. So it's really, it works great. We've got several groups that bought out both the hotel and the cottages as well, and it really works. Other than that, what did I miss, guys? Anything? So again, let me remind you about the prizes that you can win. So put your cards in that basket, right, Susan? Yeah, and see Margarita. Please see Margarita after, and we'll give you a tour of our lovely property. We're very proud of it. So thanks once again. Thank you so much.
Wow, so much to offer here. It's amazing having such a beautiful resort right here in our backyard. I was taking pictures of the activities, and you really do feel like you're out on an island in paradise somewhere. So thank you again, Scott. And thank you for donating the 2-night certificate stay. And then next, I'm so happy to introduce our program sponsor, Christina Thorne. She's the National Sales Manager with Visit Seattle, and she's going to tell us all about what Seattle has to offer.
There's so many beautiful faces, it's distracting. Did you know 40% of all businesses are owned by women in Seattle? It's actually the largest share of women-owned businesses anywhere in the country. Earlier this year, Visit Seattle partnered with PCMA to participate in the Ascent Studios at Convening Leaders. And it was a really exciting partnership because diversity and inclusion is an initiative that's really important to our city. And we wanted to showcase something meaningful and also that we could truly own as our own. And from that partnership with PCMA birthed Visit Seattle's C for She campaign. On your table, you'll see these little pins that we're calling badges of honor, and they each say something different, and it's a small piece of that campaign that was started with our partnership. C for She celebrates strong women and the city that empowers them to lead, and it's a true testament of Seattle as being a city where everyone is welcome. I have a little video to show that will highlight a little bit more about what makes Seattle such a special place, so let's take a minute and watch that.
Who gets you all the presents underneath the Christmas tree? Well, they're all from me. And I wanna be the boy who run and tell his baby every time I breaks his toy. I wanna be your boy, be your boy, be your boy. I wanna be your boy, be your boy, be your boy. Understands his woman, and you know she do right by me. Oh, you understand? And I wanna be the boy who gets you all the pretty little things in your magazines. Oh, it's such a joy. I wanna be your boy, be your boy. Be your boy. I wanna be your boy, be your boy, be your boy.
That's the city I get to sell? Come on. That fun fact about that video, the footage, most of it was filmed the end of October, beginning of November, which is one of my favorite times of year in the city. Since that video was made, we have increased our hotel rooms by 20%. We put a freeway underground, and most notably, we started construction on an additional convention center building that will more than double the city's meeting and convention capabilities. Seattle continues to be one of the fastest growing metropolitan destinations. We have 56 active crane sites within the city. That's more than any other city in the country. And not to be left out is the expansion at SeaTac Airport that now offers 91 direct domestic flights and 29 direct international flights, and is a major hub for Alaska and Delta. And I would like to remind everyone to stay around for the end. We have some really exciting Seattle-themed drawings. Recognize this box, ladies and gents. So stay around, we'll do that. And I also want to mention the coffee on your table was sponsored by a local company called Anchorhead, and they brew up something super fierce, so make sure you try that. And thanks to our sponsors at Anchorhead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. When you're showing the video, Mary and I were in the corner like, I've never been to Seattle, I really want to go. And then also thank Christina, she is a volunteer on one of our committees. So thank you for being a sponsor and a volunteer. And we couldn't do this today without our sponsors, so we want to thank all of our sponsors that helped put this program together. Visit Seattle, Margaritaville Resort Orlando, Shepard's Exhibit Services, Cobb Travel and Tourism, and Christie's Photography. Christy, and also a special mention to OPAV, who have been kind enough to provide AV for most of our Central Florida programs. So let's have a round of applause for our sponsors.
And it's my pleasure today to introduce Michelle Crowley, PCMA's Chief Growth and Innovation Officer. Michelle oversees regional brand development, content outreach, and innovation as PCMA's first Chief Growth and Innovation Officer. She is responsible for regional and revenue development in the Americas, Asia Pacific, and Europe, Middle East, and Africa regions. In addition, Crowley is responsible for education and product development. She leads PCMA's global growth strategy by evaluating and identifying how the organization can deliver value to its members through new and existing business models, education programs, and new products. Michelle began her career at PCMA and continues to work with global travel brands, build strategic relationships and partnerships with key markets, and design year-round engagement campaigns. She has held various positions at PCMA, including Vice President for Global Growth and Business Transformation. Crowley is a 2019 MBA graduate of the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and she received her bachelor's degree from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So please join me in welcoming Michelle. Thank you.
I'm going to move around, so feel free to keep eating and drinking and everything else. Apologies from Sheriff that he couldn't be here. I got a text from him on Sunday that said, "Can you go to Orlando?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And I have to say, I've really enjoyed the property I got in last night, and the GM missed one thing about the property. Was on a run this morning, and there's signs about be careful for alligators and snakes, and apparently that's normal, but from a girl from Chicago, that's not normal, so I crossed the street and kept going. But thank you for having me here today, and thank you to the volunteers of the Southeast chapter, all the hard work to bring more education to this part of the country. And so pat yourselves on the back for making time to be here today. We will spend the next kind of 45 minutes talking about partnerships. And I don't mean partnerships as in sponsorships of conferences. I mean in destinations, how to work better and more integrated across the different functions and the different stakeholders in a city. And so we're here in Orlando, but I've got examples from Melbourne, Australia, and from Houston, and I'll have a couple more that I'll go into as well. The thing about me and when I present and so forth is that I'm not the expert. You are here at your tables and you can learn from each other a lot. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking at our tables. So it won't just be me up here because that's not fun for anyone. But first, as many of you know, PCMA's vision was really revamped about 18 months ago when Sheriff Karamat became our CEO. And we really looked at the power of business events and reframing what we do and talking much more about why we do it and the impact that we can have. And so here today, we're really going to talk about how business events drive economic and social transformation. And it's in line with what cities are doing. It's in line with what governments are attempting. And so we're really looking at how we can continue to advance. I know a lot of you know PCMA, but you may know PCMA from convening leaders and from what happens here at the chapter. But I do want to share that we have an audience of 50,000 worldwide. Most of the work I do is with our teams in Asia and in Europe, and a lot of our new business models in those markets. We have members in 70+ countries, and we have team members in Singapore, Chicago, Geneva, New York, Canada, et cetera. Canada being Toronto and being Sheriff, who is there as well as in Chicago. But one of the things I want to make sure that I share with you is that the chapter is a key part of your affiliation with PCMA, and know that the chapter is supported by the larger headquarters organization based out of Chicago, but a true global organization. So we try to bring education and perspectives and networking from across the globe so that we can all learn together, because markets are moving quickly, and some are doing things more rapidly than we are here, and some are doing things that we can learn from and learn from each other. And so we tested this morning, the clicker can be a little slow, so we'll just jump here. So I'm gonna set the stage a little bit about what's happening around the world. Outside of our industry really is the world is changing, evolving, and put kind of a couple different frames and lenses around that as we look at then what does that mean for our business. And so when we look at population growth, we've divided the world into really 4 different areas. And so where do you think is the fastest growing area for population in the world today? Africa? No. Asia, exactly. 4 times growth than the other parts of the world. So really rapid growth as far as it is for population, which means travel, which means as more and more people are put into the middle class, more and more money that's being spent around the globe. And I'll have more on this later. This shift really of growth and population has to do with cities and how people are really moving to cities. And 80 to 85% of the world by 2050 will be living in cities. That's a massive shift as we look at how people move, how people work, and how people engage. It also makes a difference on how people travel and the way that we look at people getting from place to place. And of that 85%, they will take up only 1.5% of land mass. Think about how condensed it will be inside these cities. And that's when we talk about how partnerships change and how we work in these cities. It really has to be a different approach because you have 85% of the world's population living in 1.5% of the Earth. That is a huge consolidation to where people are located. And really, this 1.5% will be in 600 cities. And so it's the shift that we're seeing from a country or a region approach to a much more city-specific approach. And you see that, you feel that when you really look and check back about how cities are partnering across the globe, how they're working more collaboratively together, how the power of mayors is really increasing. Think about in Chicago, our mayor is, I think, much more powerful than our governor. And so it's really the shift in how we look at who has the power and how we look at cities interacting together. And so one of the key things we think about too when we look at the EU and Brexit and all these different factors is that the way people look at government and the role of government changes. And the way that they look at partnerships and what organizations can do together has changed. And you see this with organizations like XPRIZE. XPRIZE is an organization that says we cannot change the world and rectify wrongs that we've made if we don't work in collaboration. It's not just about government, it's about universities, it's about private sector, and it's about nonprofits coming together. And that's how they're looking at funding, getting water to rural places, not just one organization. And so what we've been trying to do at PCMA is take that same type of lens for how business events can have greater impact. How can we look differently about what's going on in the world and how we can play a role in that in communities? And so, just to pause for a minute, this is an interesting lens to place on this. And to me, the most interesting piece about our industry is how we can have impact throughout a lot of different areas of what we do and across a lot of different sectors. We talk about the business events industry as a mega group, right? We influence healthcare, we influence energy, we influence all of these different sectors. And so if anyone has the capability and the power to make a change in these different groups, it's us. It's the people in this room. It's this industry. It's the members of PCMA and the members of the industry. And so Thomas Friedman, who's a famous economist with The World is Flat, puts this interesting lens on it. And I wanted to share this with you today because I just like how he approaches it, and it's a different way to approach how change happens. We talk a lot about disruption without thinking a lot about, which is not a fun word, I hate the word disruption, right? We don't think really about how it's impacting across what we do. And so the first thing is that he says there's 3 climate changes. There's 3 climate shifts, and that's around technology, it's around weather, or as we think of it as climate, and it's around trade. And anytime there's a shift in those 3 areas, it impacts 5 key factors of our life, which is geopolitics, community, politics, ethics, and work to learn, or learn to work. So just think about that for a second. If anything shifts in technology, it influences how community interacts. Which is true, right? When you look at social media and you look at how the technology has made it easier for communities to build more grassroots, more naturally. When you look at trade, how that's impacted politics, clearly that's a big issue in geopolitics, of course, as well. Or when you look at trade and how we work and how we learn. Work to learn is the concept of, do you learn to work, meaning you have education and then you work, or do you work to learn, meaning you're always learning? You're on this constant path of working and learning more, which is what's more common today. So I lay all this out and just think for a moment, because all of this impacts how people value associations, how they value corporations, and how they look at the interaction with a city or interaction with the partners throughout the city. So to just recap before I move on to some examples, you have technology shifts, weather shifts, climate shifts, and trade. And those are 3 things that have been shifting for years. We go through different waves of those things. And every time there's a shift in those things, they impact the bottom 5 areas: geopolitics, community, politics, ethics, work to learn. Okay, so it's a different lens that Friedman puts on the way that we look at disruption and the way that we look at shifts. So what does this mean for our industry? Well, as PCMA believes, we in business events can transform our world, and first of all, economically. The research came out from the Events Industry Council about a year ago about the power of our industry, $1.7 trillion of economic impact. And PCMA recently did a study with the Melbourne Convention Bureau, Melbourne, Australia, around the value of the Asia-Pacific travel market. And we talked about 4 times the amount of people there. Really, the travel that's coming out of that market is substantial. And so when we look at these shifts about the changes of climate, the changes of technology and of trade, and we look at how destinations need to be thinking differently about their partnerships and about their interactions, there's a great example with Houston. So many cities today are really focused around sectors. So they've identified 4 or 5 sectors that's key for their growth. In most cases, those sectors that the Convention Bureau focuses on are tied back to the local city's growth initiatives. So in Houston, what would you think it would be? Oil, so they frame it as energy. Yep. What else? I can't hear you. Space, yep, exactly. Good one, because NASA's right there, that's good. They focus on advanced manufacturing, they focus on healthcare, and space and engineering. And so a lot of destinations are doing this. Is this what you're seeing across the destinations? Exactly. And so they're more focused in the types of association events or types of corporate events that they're trying to attract to the city. So that's fine, but that's just one step. I have to look much further at the partnerships in the city that can make a greater impact based on those areas or those sectors. So we'll take aerospace as an example. So obviously NASA is a big part of the culture in Houston. And one of the key things here is that space is something that is a long-term growth, right? You're constantly looking at how you can further develop the technology, how you can create more commercial spacecrafts, that sort of thing. And so when Houston, back about 50 years ago, right, was when the first, when we looked at landing on the moon, when he talked about how we can actually have space be a part of our growth as a city, we looked at what does that mean? What sort of investment is happening in there? Well, first of all, NASA has a huge budget, right? They're investing in the research, they're investing in the skills, they're investing in the development. They have a lot of patents. There's a lot of university research that goes into this. But one of the key issues with an organization like NASA is that they're limited due to government red tape, right, on what they can really do from an outreach standpoint. And so by partnering with Houston and Houston First, they're able to create SpaceCom. And SpaceCom was really about bringing together all of those different components in development, in research, in attendees, in students, and being able to bring people together across the spectrum. And okay, you're thinking, great, another exposition about space, and that's fine. What does that really mean? How does that really develop the destination? Well, from this, they said, okay, space is now more developed in our city. Meaning it's more integrated into the way that our community interacts, how they talk about the research that's happening. They brought in universities and STEM to develop further projects around this. And they said, how can we make this part of our year-round initiative? Well, we know that Houston is known for the Super Bowl. We know that they've hosted it many times. And in order to make this even a greater part of their marketing, a greater part of the integration, they had an area, the open green area, where they had how you can discover space. So they brought in some of the research from SpaceCom, some of those patents, and some of those students to be able to share what they'd learned, share how they were more integrated into what the city was doing and into the overall research. So it's not just about taking one event and having students come in and universities come in and researchers, but it's about how you can bring that across all of what you do as a part of your marketing initiatives and broader exposure to the destination. And so that led to another thing, because they got so much exposure with the Super Bowl. They got so many people interested in how can we help bring this further along to our city. And so it created student competitions. And they had over 70,000 students that came to Houston and started to compete in robotics. And this connected another sector, the advanced manufacturing piece of what they're doing. And they continued to bring people together around the kind of the point of NASA, which people get excited by. It's an inspirational piece. But they connected Super Bowl and they connected robotics and how they can continue to develop the industry locally. It's a great success in that it stayed true to the sectors of the city. It was able to bring in different types of partners. NASA could never do this on their own. They needed the Houston Convention Bureau, Visit Houston. They needed Houston First. They needed a number of these other people to come together to be a part of this in order to make true impact. And it's now a part of what Houston's known for. They have more and more startups in there, associated, of course, with commercial spacecraft, and more around the technology piece of it. But it started to become throughout what they were doing. And so you see here some of the impact that they've had, from students participating, from millions of visitors to the NASA pavilion at Super Bowl, to all of those. It was 91,000 team members. I think I said 70,000 team members that were coming in. These are students, and one of the big things is we know that cities are looking, how can they attract young talent? If there's 600 power cities in the world in the next 10 years, how are they able to bring these students to say, I want to be in Houston. I want to bring my startup here. I want to be a part of this community. And so these types of programs and how they're connecting the dots from NASA, a really powerful institution, to the Super Bowl, to Spacecom, and building each of these different pieces together, is how destinations are really looking at their partnerships in cities. So, any questions on Houston? It's a lot, but there's more and more examples of these as you look to cities. And when you also, if you're interested in this sort of thing, which I assume you are if you're here, you can look at the economic development plans of cities and see what sectors they're focused on and what research is happening. And that helps to guide where will they help support your events, where will they help to subsidize and make introductions, and where will the government get more engaged. And that brings us to the Melbourne example. So Melbourne hosted the 2014 AIDS conference. And before they hosted this, there was a lot of pushback from the community on having people with AIDS come to the city of Melbourne. And the government decided that's not okay. They wanted to transform the culture of the city to be more welcoming to this. Melbourne has incredible universities that are doing great research around this epidemic. And so they wanted to bring in people to talk more together about what was happening. And so one of the things that they did is really focused on what is success, because there was so much pushback from citizens. And so they had to say, what will it mean to be successful? And they looked at it under these 6 kind of areas, these 6 categories, which I think is a really great kind of lens to look at this under economic, political, community, collaboration, knowledge and innovation, and profile building. So they'd have success metrics under each of these. And then different team members at the Melbourne Convention Bureau would work with government to further the initiatives they had identified under these 6 success measurements. So a really thoughtful approach to how having this one event in their city would have a greater impact for the entire community. I like this example because of how thoughtful they were, when I think we don't always go that thorough into why we're bringing an event to a destination. And so they had incredible success as the Melbourne Convention Bureau. They were able to change healthcare policy by bringing these groups in. A number of those city mayors that we talked about at the beginning actually decided to start their own forum for social transformation. The first inaugural one was at this event in Melbourne, which is all about how do we change the social perception for some of these epidemics and further our cities. They brought in a lot of the researchers, they brought in the government, the health ministers were active, and they were able to really change the view of the local culture as well as the country, and it actually changed law and policy. And one of the key areas for Melbourne is that health is one of their sectors, one of their target sectors that they're working on focusing. And so I share these examples because really our industry is all about how we can make this change. We have to be much more thoughtful about the way that our partnership opportunities are in our destination and look at our partners a little bit differently. And so I want to share with you kind of an image that we've created at PCMA and how we look at the industry. It's a little bit of a different lens, and I can tell you we are not doing all of them yet. We haven't figured it all out yet. But I share it with you because I think the Houston example and the Melbourne example is getting there. And so when we look at the industry, we look at these 4 different elements of a destination, so a destination ecosystem, as we call it. And so traditionally, in business events, we work with this group, with the cities, right? You work with the Convention Bureau or the DMO or the National Tourism Organization. We're working with beautiful properties like this. We're working with fabulous audiovisual companies like we have here. We might start to work with government, especially if it's in health and some energy and some of these other sectors. Some meetings may not be as active in working with government. We're barely working with economic development. We're seeing that transition where convention bureaus and economic development are working more collaboratively together, but we're not there yet. And I believe both won't exist in their current structure in the future. They're just doing too much duplicate effort. And we're not yet working with trade investment in most cases. Some cities are starting to say, okay, as Washington, D.C., we understand we have a partnership with Beijing, and so we will actually bring associations over with us on trade missions, but we're not quite there yet as an industry. And most destinations do have brand ambassadors that are working on winning bids. So in this quadrant, we're pretty good. We're starting to work in that area. Over here, we're getting there. So we're bringing in public-private groups. When you saw NASA came in, that's more kind of government, but they also have some public and private areas that were a part of that. We're not yet bringing in the economic organizations to really further these initiatives. And examples like that would be in Chicago, we have World Business Chicago. Their job is to bring more corporations to headquarters in the city of Chicago. They're not at all working with the Convention Bureau on how can you bring in some of those target corporations to conferences and hold meetings as a part of those events. That's not yet happening. Not because there isn't the desire to, it's just not a priority and not a focus. And so we have to shift that because our industry is powerful in bringing those connections together, but we're seen as the meeting side of what we do, not seen as how we can really make that economic and social transformation. We are starting to bring universities and research hubs in. So the Melbourne example where they brought in some of the health sectors and health ministers to further some of that research and share that. From a research hub perspective, how are the startups in the community actually really becoming a part of our meetings? How are we connecting them much further? And that goes into our corporate, where we do have startups there and the headquarters of companies. How are the big headquarters helping attract the right kinds of conferences to the cities? How are they providing letters of support? And how are they aligned with the economic development piece as well? A lot of these corporations sit on these boards that are part of the local mayor or local economic development, but business events is missing. And that's not okay, because our industry is actually a key factor in how those people can drive success in their cities. So what do you think about this? Is it aligned? Is it making sense? Is questions on it? Are you seeing destinations doing it very well? Why don't we spend just 2 or 3 minutes at our table and talk a little bit more about this quadrant grid, this 2x2, and see if you're finding some destinations that are doing it, okay? Because you got to keep moving. You just had a nice, delicious lunch, right? Okay, so 2 or 3 minutes. Go ahead. Okay, so as I mentioned, one of the great values of having all of you in the room is to be able to share your own experiences and stories, and so we can learn from each other. So I'm gonna come around and pick a couple tables and just have someone to share out maybe some of the key takeaways from your conversation or questions you have, because again, the answer is probably in this room. So this table, who wants it? Okay, you got pointed to, sorry.
I was just talking with Mary. She's with Holmes Briscoe. And she was trying to better understand, and I was saying that she makes a lot of affinity or kind of Smurf groups and religious groups. Her husband's a pastor. So I was saying one of the things is she might want to go to a city that has a lot of mega churches or has a good drive market where it might be a little more conservative or the religious attendees are, and the community may be more supportive, and she may get more local volunteers and things like that. So if you were, a Holmes Briscoe person or another third party or organization that had a lot of medical, you might want to go someplace with medical technology companies and things like that, because you'd get the support from the locals and such. So.
Great. Okay, good discussion, good conversation. Thanks for sharing and kicking us off. Okay, this table. Who's going? Okay.
Okay, so what we were talking about was looking at, a lot of people think of our area, we'll say Central Florida, Kissimmee. area. They think it's just Disney, it's all the theme parks. But we have some great medical technology and a great incubator here for the sensor world, those who build high-tech nanotechnology sensors. Most people wouldn't know. And so it's interesting to see how we're bringing in, trying to connect the technology with a whole nother market, and just to spread that information out with, whether it's through, like you were saying, through speakers. But I know we were really impressed with how they connected NASA and the Super Bowl. That just didn't match my mind, but like you were saying, that exposure on TV, my goodness, everybody's multi-layered. There's so much out there.
Yeah, but I think that's a great example, and that's why I like the Houston example, because it is a bit of this stretch, but somehow NASA's now become a part of the city, and so they can bring it to live wherever they go. But you know, with here and with Disney and the beacon technology, I mean, Disney's beacon technology is the most advanced that we've seen. And so they were the first ones to do magic bands, I believe, in debuting that, right? And so you can connect it, Disney and beacons, and how that's furthering the way you interact as customers and changing the way that you the way that you move. So it's, you know, I'm making a stretch, but it can be done. I mean, if NASA, the Super Bowl can be done, then it can be done here, certainly. You've got the examples, and you've got the data behind it, reports behind it to prove it, so great one. Okay, how about this table? They're all turning away from me. One of you two. Sure, go for it.
We were just talking when we looked at the board, basically, that there's a huge, I was saying not too far from here towards St. Cloud, there's a huge tech site there. And we're just talking about, there's a lot of different things, like you said, with the nano stuff that people don't know about. They just equate Orlando with Disney. And a lot of these different companies, like BioSpine recently came down here as well. So all these different things that come here. So if we can get the students that go to school here to stay in the city and not move out, then, you know, it would help with our city and promoting the growth of the different businesses.
Great, good example. And I think one of the key things is when you have a powerful group like this in the room who influences meetings, it's important you all know. If you live here, it's important that you all know that that exists, right? It's important that you're able to be advocates for your own city, knowing that you plan meetings probably all over or work all over, but it's important that you have that experience so you can be an ambassador, and as we call them, mouthpieces for your own meeting. Okay, one more table. Who had a good discussion? All right. Way to point. She handed that right off.
Voluntold.
I just want to preface with why I pointed to her. So I work with the CVB and she's with the economic development. So it was like,
Oh, okay, so we have the CVB and economic development in the same room.
So
Hopefully I didn't offend you with what I said.
No, because we need to make these improvements. I'm with the state's economic development agency, state of Florida, so I was just talking with Michelle about how we do need to partner together, and a lot of CVBs and economic development offices are in the same building, and they don't talk, and they're duplicating their efforts, and it's a waste of their time if they're duplicating their efforts. So yeah, we talked about how, you know, as the Economic Development Agency, we're aware of conferences that are relevant for the medical industry, and then how they could partner with that and maybe bring a medical conference here. So there's a lot of opportunity. So no, I really enjoyed this. I wasn't offended.
Good. You two can go talk later if you want to. No, but I think that's great. And actually, we've seen West Palm Beaches and some other groups in Florida that actually have been quite advanced as far as working more together. And you find it, we've seen it's a little bit easier, or maybe it's more integrated in smaller communities than in the major cities. I mean, I'm in Chicago, and when you're talking with Chicago, the Convention Bureau, the World Business Chicago, Economic Development, the mayor's office, it's this giant kind of, you know, it's not a triangle, but it's this interaction that's just not there. But in other parts of the world, as we gave the example with Melbourne, which comes with its own challenges, you're seeing this collaboration come together a little bit more. So in developing cities like Barranquilla, Colombia, they have their mayor's office, their government, their tourism, and they call it pro-Colombia or pro-Barranquilla, which is economic development. They actually all have this partnership together. And they have a charter that defines the roles of each of them, when they meet, how they'll work together, how they support one another. And I said, it's not perfect, but it's way better being more aware of what's happening than what they were doing before. And so that's the big step, right? We have to make this step because otherwise, the role of convention bureaus is changing and the way that they provide value is changing. And so I have to make sure that integration happens and the partnerships, they can be a key part of this and even facilitate this. Otherwise, I don't want to say that they won't exist, but the way that they exist is going to look a lot different as the questions come even greater scrutiny from the cities. Anything, and did you want to add something? You said sure, so I thought maybe she wants to say something. She's with Visit Orlando, so maybe something.
No, and I was just saying it was true, actually, because this is actually one of our strategies that we're looking at for next year, and the real focus on, I was telling the ladies here that, and gentlemen, that our focus is, and right now, I don't know if we're necessarily doing a good job of reaching out to our local chapters and being more involved with the organizations that are right here in our backyard so that we can focus on them and bringing the bigger events that maybe we're missing out on, and building that partnership with them, because it does take a lot of local support in order to get those big events to even consider the city. So that's a strategy that we're looking into. And then we're also talking about partnership with the economic development. A lot of people don't realize that International Drive is not downtown Orlando. So the Downtown Economic Development Board has put together an incentive to really focus on groups to bring them to downtown Orlando. So these are ways that we are trying to partner more together so that we're informed, they're informed. We all benefit at the end of the day when the group comes here. So working better together to ultimately, have the same goal and bring more jobs to the city is, what we're all in it for. So
thank you. Thanks for adding. I think one of the key things we're seeing in developing destinations, which are becoming more and more the competition of developed destinations, is the strategy around bid, build, buy. And so traditionally, it's that clear what everyone knows what bidding is. You go after an event, you're building an event. So in Singapore, I have another example I won't give today, but where they've built a fintech event because that's a key sector for their government growth. And so the government has invested funds, but they're working with local startups and with the universities to have a fintech festival. Which is a week-long event that's attracting actually the associations and the corporations. So they're stealing market share from associations, essentially, and bringing them to this fintech festival. And then buy is where you're either purchasing an event or licensing an event to come into your city, like a Comic-Con or TED or some of those different ones. So these cities aren't just looking at bidding only because they recognize the rotational pattern of a lot of events, but they're looking at this build approach. And usually that can have greater government support and connection, and it furthers the initiatives in the city at a much more rapid pace than just bidding for events. So that kind of split is driving some associations to partner at those events, and it's taking away maybe some attendance at their own. So the competition is getting greater and greater for attendance and for eyes and for money, and certainly PCMA sees that as well in our own right. So it's an interesting kind of evolution that you see, but this model is becoming just more and more important, and I'm sure there's things we're missing here that that can play a role in events that we haven't considered, that we didn't used to think startups had a role, but why wouldn't you have startups playing a role in the types of events you have and connecting them with private equity firms in your destination? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It just takes effort. And not here to say that the industry is not great and we're not doing building and so forth, but here to say that we really do drive economic and social transformation, and we have to be cognizant of that as our role so that we continue to push each other and so that the industry continues to get more and more exposure and advancement. And one last kind of example I wanted to share. We don't need to recap those two. I think we're good there. One example that I like that I didn't, this is not here, I don't think, but it could be, maybe. But one example that I like is from the European Society of Cardiology. And so I don't have a slide about it, but the European Society of Cardiology is one of the largest heart conferences in the globe, one of the largest events in Europe. And they were in London. And they said, one of the key factors that's missing in our event is the public. Right? Heart health is a huge issue among most countries and most cities as well. So they said, how do we get the public more involved? And so what they were able to do is outside of the conference, outside of the walls of the convention center, they were able to create a scavenger hunt throughout the city of London. And they promoted it to the attendees, they promoted it to the public and the community and to students so they could discover their city, but discover it in a heart health friendly manner. And they brought in startups and students to create apps for hackathon competitions to be able to build this scavenger hunt in their city. And it was available so that people could see historical sites, at the same time recognize how many steps they're getting, have a gamification component of it so that they could understand and compete against friends. And it's just another way to shift, because one of the key things on that grid that we're missing is the public. And how do we involve the public into our events? And so that's an easy example in a sense because it's medical and heart health affects all of us, but I think there's a connection for most events that come into a city that we can better engage the public in what we do. And honestly, it wasn't the cardiology, the European Society of Cardiology that really had to do much. They were able to bring in students to really create this type of interaction and gamification. So kind of a different lens, because a lot of these things we think more and more work. Right? More and more time, more resources we have to put towards this. But because of the accessibility and because of all those climate shifts that we saw at the beginning, it's more able for all these people to become involved and help as we continue to kind of shift our industry forward. And so I just want to remind you that as a part of this industry, it's all of our roles to continue to push forward and to make sure that this industry is known more than just providing hotel rooms and meeting space, and really how we can actually drive change. And hotel rooms and meeting space are a critical component, but also what we do to further the industry and the world overall. So I want to thank you very much for having me here today. And I also want to invite you to Convening Leaders, which is coming up in January. It is our large annual event. We're very excited about our lineup of speakers and a lot of our activations. And you're going to see more and more about how PCMA looks at business events driving economic and social transformation at the event. So thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much, Michelle. That was amazing. I love that conversation of tying together the whole community and technology sectors and with our industry. So I really appreciate that. So after thanking Michelle, also want to thank another Michelle in the room, Michelle Moore. So this is a total surprise. Michelle is on our Orlando and Kissimmee Planning Committee, and she was responsible for putting all her hard work and effort into this and many of our events in the area. And we kind of were waiting until today to present her with the Volunteer of the Quarter Award for Q2. So thank you, Michelle. The photo that you saw on the rotating slide, she's our Volunteer of the Quarter for Q3. So we were just waiting for Michelle won Q2, but we didn't want to tell her until we saw her in person.
Thank you very much.
So thank you. A hug. And then one last thing, we're going to do one more call for business cards. So have 2 business cards ready, and we'll do a sweep around the room, and for planners only, yes. We'll do a sweep around the room, and then we'll have our sponsors come up and draw names. So we'll do Visit Seattle first. Yeah, come on up. And then you can tell us about your prizes.
If you don't win one of these 3 prizes, come find me later and tell me a fun fact about Seattle or a story about Seattle, and I have something for you.
So she is coming around now. So one basket's for you, one basket's for them.
So I have 3 drawing gift cards. The first drawing I'm going to do is for Nordstrom. Nordstrom headquartered and started in Seattle in like 1913. And okay. And the winner is Natasha. All right. The next one is, this was a company that started as a bookstore and has grown well beyond that. You may have heard of it, Amazon. There's another nice gift card for them. And this one is for Krista Fleming. Krista is very familiar with Seattle, so there you go. Actually, Amazon has just opened a new store in downtown. They're calling it their 5-star store, and they have products that have 5-star ratings on Amazon, and it changes like every month or so, and so you can actually go into like a brick and mortar store and buy Amazon products. So it's kind of fun. So come to Seattle. And the last one is for REI. REI is an outdoor recreation enthusiast store that also headquartered, and the flagship is in downtown Seattle, has a rock climbing wall. It has a dirt bike trail. It has all sorts of fun stuff. And the winner of that one is Monica Armstrong.
I think Christina has the very best raffle picking hand ever. She's like,
And there's a store, there's an REI store in Winter Park.
Thank you. So next we're going to do the 2-night stay here at Margaritaville Resort. Margarita just stepped out getting ready for the tours after we wrap up. So Mary is going to draw for her. I'll do the shaking while you. There you go.
I always grab like 4. Okay.
Michelle Taunton with Helms Briscoe. Well, thank you guys again. We look forward to seeing you at the next PCMA chapter event. So if you want to stick around for networking or site tours, we'll be doing that in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you.